We're ready on the other end. Madam Chair, if we do have quorum, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Yeah. Well, okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Today is October 21st and it is 3:34 p.m. We'll call the Virtual Sustainability and Resiliency Task Force meeting to order. Vice Mayor, if you wouldn't mind going ahead and popping up the flag, and we can go ahead and have a silent meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Second, I'll do that right now.
All right. I pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Beautiful. Thank you, Vice Mayor. And if you wouldn't mind going ahead and doing the roll call for today.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Chairperson Elizabeth Carpenter.
Present.
Vice Chairperson Maribel Fruitstone.
Present.
Member Courtney Kirk.
Yes, sir, present.
Member Kristen McLean.
Present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, you do have a quorum, Madam Chair. For the record, we do have Juan and Camila from Serbia. Juan Malarat and Camila is, Camila, how you pronounce your last name? It starts with a Z.
Yes, it's Zabla.
Zabla.
Thank you. Yeah.
For the record, we also
Can't believe you can pronounce mine, but not hers, but go ahead.
So, we also have Hugh Glavin, which we'll bring over in a second. He kind of acts as an advisory role to the committee, Madam Chair. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Juan and Camila, for joining us, as well as Hugh, of course, as always, and welcome. Before we turn it over to you guys for your portion of this, I just want to go ahead and see if there's any additions to the agenda from any of the board members, task force members.
I'm good.
Kristen's thinking.
No, I'm not. I'm scrambling for my agenda, which is buried in my drive. Yes, I'd like to give a brief update on my conversation with the village manager and with the engineer around the LMS that we had a meeting today.
We can go ahead and add that to the agenda. Let's see. Should we just, any reason not to just put it at the end, Kristen? Okay, so why don't we put it at, yeah, let's put it at the very end. So it'll become item 8. H8. Ms. Fruitstone, do you have anything that you wanted to add to the agenda?
No.
The only other thing that I wanted to discuss was the lighting issue, but I think I can talk about that under unfinished business. So we'll go ahead and can I get a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of an LMS update as item H8?
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
A second.
Hearing a motion and a second, all those in favor of approving the agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the agenda is approved with the addition noted by Member McLean. And moving on to approval of minutes from last meeting that Member so nicely put together for us. Does anyone have any additions or changes to those? No. Okay, can I get a motion to approve those?
I have a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
Thank you, Member Fruitstone. Do I have a second?
Second.
Perfect. All those in favor of approving the minutes from last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor say nay. Hearing none, the minutes are approved, and we can go ahead and jump right into item F, acknowledgement of visitors and or special presentations. And Vice Mayor, I will turn the floor over to you for that.
No problem, Madam Chair. We don't have any visitors because Juan and Camila, they're here for agenda item number 1. If they were here to give us an update or something like that, or the village manager, they would be visitors, but now they're on the agenda, so we can pass by this.
Perfect. Okay, we'll open up to good and welfare. I see Sandra Valencia and Hugh Gladwin on the line. Do either of you have anything to add for the good and welfare before we jump into the agenda? Let's see. Okay, I don't see any hands raised on the panelist roll or attendees. So yes, seeing no hands. Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and jump into agenda item 1, H1, which is the El Portal Comprehensive Plan, which I will again turn back over to Vice Mayor Nickerson for a quick introduction before we turn to our guests.
No problem. Thank you very much, you guys. This right here is Camilla, which you guys see, and Juan. They represent Serbia. They've been working with us for a long time. Great individuals, great company, and they're here to talk about the comp plan, which is coming before the village council next week at the meeting. They did reach out to me and they wanted to know, if there were any questions or comments about it. I did want to bring it to the Resiliency Sustainability Task Force. This is where I feel like would be perfect for any questions or comments. I love you guys and the way you guys think and the way you guys analyze things. So I wanted them to come here first. Madam Chair, the way I would suggest that we do this, so that they don't have to do like a long presentation and things like that. We should go from each individual of the task force, possibly starting with you, Madam Chair, and the Vice Chair, and then maybe Member Kirk and Member McLean. Member McLean, I'm not saying that you're last, but I'm just thinking of it in alphabetical order. You guys, in politics, people get sensitive about that, so you have to point things like that out. I was thinking last name K, last name N, so you'll be surprised how politicians are. So you have to just be careful with people like that sometimes. But I would suggest doing it that way, Madam Chair. You ask your questions. They can answer your questions, then the next person, because it makes no sense to do a long presentation when there might be people that don't even have any questions.
Sure. Okay. To kick it off, I reviewed all the documents that Vice Mayor Nickerson sent over with our task force email. But I was focusing on the areas that we focus on. But I think it would be helpful to me if you guys wouldn't mind, not doing an all-encompassing presentation or anything, but a short summary on what the comp plan has that touches on, sustainability, resiliency, flooding, wildlife, infrastructure, the things that affect the task force, and I'm certainly not expecting you guys to go on and on, just a quick summary of those things if you don't mind, or whatever you would like to point out specifically on those topics.
Certainly, Madam Chair, if I may. Thank you for having us. Very quickly,
Thank you.
In a very simple answer, those things that affect you in terms of the comp plan, and I'll give you just one word: everything. It's a comprehensive plan. So what it basically means is that we're looking at everything from health to infrastructure to the vision. It's essentially a plan that tells the state which way the village is going and what the plans are. And this comprehensive plan was established many years ago, and every 10 years or so, every 7 to 10 years, it gets updated. And so what we're doing today, or what we're going to be doing, is updating it. With that in mind, and just to give you a little bit of background, there are essentially, for planning and zoning, there are 2 documents that regulate the way that things can be done in any municipality. The comprehensive plan gives you objectives and policies, and they're big picture items. And this zoning map and the zoning code is what actually regulates. I mentioned that because there's always a little bit of confusion from almost everyone, right? Which one should I read? Well, in theory, you should read both. The comprehensive plan, again, it's big picture, and the zoning code and the zoning map is, let's say, the implementation of those goals and policies that are established in the comprehensive plan. The zoning code does not take into account some things that the comprehensive plan touches on. For instance, health. Even though they are related, they are not specific. They're not specific. One doesn't translate into the other. So what we have presented to you that you received are those amendments. And we do those amendments because, as you can imagine, just like people, villages evolve over time and change and grow. And there are some things that need to be protected. As Member Kirk mentioned in some of his comments, which I would love to get into as soon as we can, because we need to clarify some things. And there are some things that he brought up that are important to discuss. And I will be happy to discuss any and all questions and comments and your proposed amendments that you may, changes that you may have. It may seem that it's too late, but it's not. So the same way that I mentioned to Councilperson Nickerson, Vice Mayor Nickerson, I'm sorry, or upcoming mayor. I don't know how to address you anymore. But we still have time, and we still have time because of, I guess, an oddity of this process. We have to send a semi-approved document to the state. And for that reason, we need a first reading, and that's why we're going to this first reading, this upcoming first reading. But state, of course, wants to have a say, and so they're going to give us comments. So we're going to be receiving comments between first and second reading. So we have plenty of time to make modifications and have those discussions with state. We will receive comments from state, so we'll still have the ability to make modifications even from within, even from this task force. This is a very general, very high-level introduction to what a comprehensive plan is. And if you want, Camila, if you want to, I don't know if you can share screen, but you can pull up the abridged version that the Vice Mayor sent, and we can go in detail if you'd like, or if you guys have already read it and have no questions, we can move on to specific questions. Whatever you guys want. I
just have a quick question on what you just said about modification.
Yes.
After it goes to a first reading and gets comments back from the state, are we limited to modifying only those items that the state has commented on, or we can still modify anything at that point?
We can still modify. All right, the word anything is a little broad. We don't want to go back to state with total changes to our code, to our comprehensive plan, because it would create a lot of back and forth with them, and they like certainty. They like a certain amount of predictability. But we can still make modifications, and we can still discuss significant changes to what we are proposing, if the residents want, and if the village wants. We won't send anything to state, by the way, until we get a first reading approval. And so, as the Vice Mayor knows, we can go to this upcoming reading and say, listen, what we presented to you, we got additional information from the task force. So we are presenting it to you with the recommendation to make a few changes to what you're about to approve. And so the council can approve or deny, but hopefully approve with conditions or with changes. And those changes we will modify before we send to state. So again, all that to say, your comments and your suggestions, we definitely can incorporate, and we will incorporate before, during the reading, the first reading, and before we send it to state. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
I'm long-winded today. I don't know what it is. It's
the weather, and you're not.
I'm restrained on Monday, less so on Tuesday, and then when it comes to Wednesday, I'm all out. Cami, we're ready to go through the whole thing, but I don't think that you want us to go through 3 grueling hours of this. We have comments from Kirk, by the way. Please, I would be remiss not to thank you for them. I wish more residents were, what did you say in your email? OCD, and sent us more comments. But I appreciate them, and we can go over them if you want, in addition to any of the other comments that the task force may have.
I'll defer to the chair when and or if she wants to go through them, but those were sent, as I stated in the email, as me as a citizen, not as a member of the task force, because they contain some viewpoints that are specific to my view that have not been discussed, and therefore I wanted to be very clear that I was not representing in any way, shape, or form the task force, and solely myself as a citizen.
Yeah, which is good. But at the same time, Member Kurt, if those are your views, being that the comprehensive plan, it encompasses everything when it comes to, like if we want, if the vision of the village is, more residential or more commercial or all of those type of things, still run through, resiliency and sustainability. So it all kind of like, comes together. So I would just say, my suggestion would just be if, I think you had great points. And my suggestion would just be, to say those points so that if those points are to be incorporated into the comprehensive plan, that we do, just because it might be hard to do it at the council meeting on Tuesday, if that makes sense.
Madam Chair, with your permission, I'll ask some questions, but I will again defer to you and/or Vice Chair, because that was the order that Vice Mayor Nickerson presented. But if you'd like me to ask some questions, I have some.
Yeah, I think that that's a great idea. I would love to hear your questions and perspective.
Sure.
And Kirk, we can go through these questions as going down the list, the residents' views.
Yeah, I want to go a little higher level first. My first question is, where did the direction to bring El Portal to be more commercial and less residential, where did that direction come from? And was that Village Council approved or endorsed?
There's a few points that I'd like to make to answer that question. The first one is, as you know, there was a charrette that was done in 13, and there was also the code. So the direction of the village is not going more commercial, but we have changed the way that the land uses on 2nd Avenue and the annexed area are going to work. So instead of, I know you're pointing at your first, one of the comments that you had, which was with regards to, I think I have it here, basically residential to residential, right?
Yep.
That's the comment. It was a stricken word that opened up the uses from strictly residential to a more general mixed use. The reference is again to 2nd Avenue and to the annexed area. One of the things that we can do is tighten the language up, and we can distinguish Zone 4 and Zone 5 from Zone 3, and we can still call it out as strictly residential for Zone 3, which is the intent. So it's not that the village is going into a commercial spree here. It's that we are trying to capture both the charrette results and the code.
And when we're talking about the stuff on Northeast 2nd, has anything changed from our form-based code on what is allowed and what is not based on, or is anything going to be changed to the form-based code based on the overall comp plan?
No, the zoning code is not changing.
Okay, and there's no plans to change it to reflect any changes in the comp plan as of yet?
Correct. And again, going back to the big picture, the comprehensive plan looks at this big picture, and the zoning code is more specific. So what we are trying to do is capture in a big bubble in the comprehensive plan the direction of the village. And so that's why we took out the more strict residential, because we need to take a look at the whole village, and the whole village also includes some zones that are mixed use.
Right, and I would strongly recommend that we tighten up that language, to use your phrasing, to echo what you're saying, because certainly in reading it, that's not the digestion that I got. And therefore, of course, I'm very concerned. Now we're becoming just another Wynwood, throw down another, strip mall anywhere you want kind of thing, which clearly I believe as village, we do not want.
Okay, no, and I understand that those two were analogies, but just to put them in the right framework, Wynwood is 5 to 8 story buildings. Our 2nd Avenue is 3. Wynwood allows for fully commercial buildings. We do not. The density of Wynwood is a little bit over 3 times the amount that we are allowing.
Well, Little Haiti, the particular location, I'm worried about the over commercialization and the underlying change to what we have, which is a residential community. And I think that's why most people, or almost everybody, moves here, is because it's a great residential community, and it is close to other communities that have commercial options that I don't think anybody here wants to live next to the Citadel. They want to go there, they don't want to live next to it. So I think that's my point. I don't want to get into a long discussion, quite honestly.
And just to give you more peace of mind, the future land use map of the comprehensive plan is not changing.
Where is that available? Because it's referred to in the 60-page document, but I did not see it. And I looked around.
Should be on the website, and the data is available there too.
Okay. Perhaps a link or a reference to where it can be found would be helpful in the comp plan as well for people who are reading it.
And for those that are watching, it's on the website, the Village of El Portal website, under planning, comprehensive plan. The documents are there. Cami?
Yes, we have to add it. And actually, thank you for that, Mr. Cook. We had not included it as part of the amendments because it won't be amended, but we will now, so that it's there for reference. So thank you for pointing that out.
Okay. So that was one of the concerns. The other concerns, I mean, at one of the items, the policies was to allow a school on any residential property.
No, you read that right. But that policy was actually carried over from the very original comprehensive plan, and it can be discussed as to whether it is the wish of the El Portal now to amend or remove or change that policy.
Yeah, those items that were neither underlined or stricken are carried over from the original plan. So those are things that.
But if we're changing things, we should change to correct wrong things as well as to add new things, correct? I mean, we shouldn't just say it was there, so we're not changing it. Otherwise, we wouldn't make any change.
So let's make those notes, Cami, and make sure that those make it to the council.
Well, the reason, yes, and the reason some of them will remain is because we have not been present for the previous amendments. They may or may not have been something that was, that didn't want, that, you know, it wasn't meant to be removed, or that the council at that point or residents wanted to keep it. So we didn't want to make our own opinion without feedback on those items too.
It's a good point. I think that, you know, that language is confusing. There's some things in the comprehensive plan that are confusing, and if we can clean it up, it will be better.
And I'm on our current website. Can you direct me to what's called the future land use map? I've got comp plan, pattern book. I've got regulating plan. I've got nothing that says future land use map.
Comp plan.
Okay, I'm on comp plan.
No, I need to update that, the data portion. I'll do that right now. We can do that right away.
But I mean, I looked for it, but Juan, you said it was somewhere and I didn't see it. So if you can direct me to it, that would be fine. And I'll take the hit that I was stupid and find it, but I did look.
No, we will put it on that section. My understanding is that the original, because this is not changing, it's not an amendment, that information was already available at the Village of El Portal. But if it's not, we'll put it as a exhibit, even though just for clarity's sake, it is not changing.
Okay, if it's referred to, I just want to be able to find it, and I could not find it. And again, it's very possible that it was there, but clearly not visible. Okay.
No, you may be right again, because this was a folder that we had as quote unquote amendments, and it is not changing. We didn't include any non-changes into that folder.
So again, in deference to the task force, I provided my feedback. That was again personal feedback, and I don't want to drag the task force into my personal concerns. But from a resiliency and sustainability kind of perspective, how are we dealing with the expected increase in people? I've noticed a number of, because of development that this comprehensive plan anticipates. I saw a number of things in there talking about sewer, so that of course is a good thing, you know, to try and make sure we don't have more septic that is leaky. I saw things as far as transportation and bikeable and walkable. I saw things as far as sustainable foods or sorry, local foods and access to that. So I saw a lot of things, but at some point, have we done, and I didn't look at the data, so if it's there, feel free to point me to it. At some point, do we become too dense to be able to handle the sustainability and the water quality, land quality, the tree quality, et cetera? Do we become too dense, that this is densely populated, that is, that we take a huge hit, that we get more flooding because we've got more concrete for buildings, et cetera, and less green space? Have we done any real research and data on that to make sure that our intended or allowed construction slash new building takes into account the water quality and that sort of thing?
There are concurrency requirements and concurrency management requirements stated within the comprehensive plan, coordination with the county and making sure that the level of service standards are kept and this needs to be evaluated for every new development that is proposed in the village, specifically Zone 5 and Zone 4. That needs to be carefully reviewed in order specifically for that not to happen.
Yeah, these kind of projects have to go through DERM. They have to go through county permitting. They have to go through a number of concurrency requirements. The density and again, I'll pick up on some of on the email that we received. The intent is not to increase density. Then the intent is the density that is allotted or allowed within the zoning code, which again was approved by state. There is room there for growth. The statement in the comprehensive plan that talks about increasing density is with regards to, that sentence is read together. It's increase density in a sustainable manner. That's the idea here. That within the permitting, the permitted growth that the village has already set itself for, that it's done in a sustainable manner. And that is done, as you said, as you point out, with the concurrency requirements that any development has to go through.
Okay, I guess overall, between the code and the comp plan, I do have concerns that El Portal will go from 2,500 to 3,000 people to 12,000 people in a matter of a few years when the trailer park gets built out, when Cavista gets completed, and additional developments there. And while that's good to one sense for tax revenues, from a traffic gridlock, etc., pollution, trash, what happens when you have a lot of people in a dense area, that is concerning. And certainly from the sustainability standpoint, that is certainly concerning. I understand it's within our code. I understand that was previously approved, but from a sustainability standpoint, to me, that's very concerning.
Right. Again, nothing is being changed from what we have currently in our regulations. In fact, remember that the higher density is allocated on the east side of the tracks with one single connection into the rest of the village. So the impact, which every project needs to study, and they do a traffic study to the rest of the residential area, the Z3 in the village. Again, it has mitigating factors such as the crossing of the railroad and the limited access. So most of that traffic is going to be, as I recall, the traffic study showed for the Cavista, which is the only one we have to this date, onto Biscayne. Any future development will have to go through the same requirements of traffic study, DERM, for environmental impact, etc. So again, I'm not dismissing at all, by the way, Kirk, don't think that I am, because your questions are important. But remember that we are looking at big picture. That's the comprehensive plan goal, is to establish the vision. We're not changing anything in the code. And so what we're trying to do with this amendments now is to incorporate what the code changed and approved, to make sure that there's no conflicts. But again, you're absolutely right. Those are things that are concerning, and we need to keep an eye.
And I guess the only true policy change that I would recommend was on page 17, 1.5.1, to consider natural disaster impacts and other federal funding that we might be able to get, or state funding, whatever, whether it's for technology and infrastructure, for internet, or for natural disaster type things, flooding, underground utilities for windstorms, etc. So I would encourage that from a sustainability and resiliency standpoint, to make sure that those are included as ideas, concepts, and desires for funding resources.
Very good.
Just to add to that, looking at 1.5.1 that Member Kirk was just pointing out, I see improves, where is it? Project improves village resilience to flooding and sea level rise. But I don't see anything in here about improving our sustainability or mitigating climate change. Has that been something that's been discussed?
So resilience is a big umbrella, right? Resilience can mean many, many things.
Well, I agree, but it says resilience to flooding and sea level rise.
And your question again, to mitigate?
That doesn't talk about mitigation of carbon emissions or the sustainability of the village or reducing our carbon emissions or anything like that.
And thank you for pointing it out. It's one of those pet peeves of mine. There are other goals, Camila. I don't know if you can point at the specific ones that I'm thinking about, because I don't remember where they are, but we are always finding that most of the goals relate to each other. There are some goals that talk about, for instance, walkability, and access to daily needs like food, etc., which actually reduce the need for short car trips, and those are some of the ways that we are trying to mitigate the emission of carbon dioxide, monoxide. So there's other goals that tackle that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can the comprehensive plan establish goals to reduce carbon emissions? Certainly. But how are we going to measure them, right, as a village? And if we set ourselves goals, let's say for 10 years, we could, I guess, establish the reduction of car trips. But again, it would set the village up to make sure that there's a study done in a certain period of time to see if those goals have been met. So whereas while I'm not dismissing the need to reduce carbon emissions, I'm not one of those climate change naysayers. I do believe that there's a problem. We are trying to tackle it in ways that are, I guess, more, if you forgive me for the way that I'm going to say it, but more natural ways of doing it. Again, encouraging walkability, so that there is now, you're not taking away the choice of people to drive, but you are providing alternatives for driving.
So I totally agree that those are great ways of tackling the problem. But to your point, really, in this section, it talks about criteria for ranking new projects for funding. And so if we put something in there that says, project improves village sustainability, that would then allow us to fund things that encompasses the funding of walkability and access to food, like you just said. So it kind of, on the flip side, putting that broad category, it allows us to focus on those other plans or those other priorities that are already in the plan, but then also gives us the ability to focus on something like a co-op for solar, or ways that we could reduce the amount of water we're using or the amount of energy we're using, just being more efficient with our energy usage. So it kind of, putting something like that in there to me would seem like it tackles those great goals you just said, like walkability and energy efficiency and carbon emissions.
Very generic. That Camila, would there be a reason why not we wouldn't do that? Okay.
No,
So-
we can add specific, even if they were mentioned in other elements, we can add specific objectives and policies relating to sustainability, and also refer to the other elements, goals and policies from there, so that they can be easily found.
That's a good way to go about this. Again, I'm always thinking 40 years in advance. I don't want the village to be tied to a study of carbon emissions in 40 years in case, I don't know, there's no budget or there's no willingness to do it, whatever. I want to make sure that that this plan establishes the goals and policies that it establishes the vision, and that it establishes a good way forward without having to tie ourselves up unless there's something that is of critical importance, right?
Sure. So I think that what I've always liked about the word sustainability, right, is that it's not tying you up into a specific level of carbon reduction or energy use or water use. It's the idea of sustainability is that you can continue to live the same quality of life in perpetuity, right? So that you're not altering your access to resources to the extent that you have them. You may be improving them, but you're not losing access to resources, but you're accessing resources in a way that will allow us to continue doing so for the next 100 years. So I think the word sustainability kind of encompasses some of the concerns that I think you're expressing.
Let's find a way to word this properly and bring that to the council.
And some of the policies do bring it up, but perhaps we do need to mention specifically relating to, so there are within the resilience element, perhaps it comes down to also relabeling the element to include sustainability at the same time, and just make specific objectives and move them out from where they are now. For example, objective 1 is actually all about sufficient and affordable energy supply, and looking at renewable energy sources and removing barriers to achieve that in the village. But we can add more specific language so that is easily recognizable and stands out as a separate goal, not just in the resilience.
Madam Chair, you were basically saying that in policy 1.5.1, one of the bullet points should be something like project supports El Portal's sustainability, something as generic as that. Am I correct?
Yeah, I that was the point I was making as to 1.1.5 exactly, but I appreciate what Juan and Camila are saying about incorporating it further into the rest of the document as well. But I just to Member Kirk's point, like I would really like to, from my perspective on the task force, I would really like to see that as in the ranking criteria for funding as well.
Remember that this document doesn't preclude us from going after other funding. I just want to throw that there. I mean, if you wanna go to state and ask for funding to grow potatoes, and it's not in the comp plan, we can still do it.
Right, but I think it does help to
have it in the comp plan. Yes.
I think it helps to focus the grant writers and other things. If we have it in the comp plan, it's kind of, well, this is endorsed. This is important enough. I think it's a very small change, and I would suggest it be included.
Yeah, thank you, Member Kirk. That's exactly what my thought was too, especially given that the way that this is laid out, it says the criteria to rank new projects for funding is this. Criteria with half the importance of the above include this. So that really kind of implies that if it's not on there, it has less than half of the importance of even the second subset of items on the list. And so I think excluding that is telling of the importance of it.
And Cami, we could also change the wording a little bit so that it says including but not limited to.
I think that that's a good idea as well.
that doesn't flow particularly well with half the importance.
It does not.
It's kind of odd, but anyway, you guys, I think we're not going to rewrite it. I think we're just providing input, and Juan and Camila, you'll.
Discussion on the 27th again if you want to, but I
don't know what that was. But Juan and Camila are going to, take our input and make appropriate changes that you feel and present it to the council for the first reading. Am I accurate in that process?
Very good.
Okay.
Yes.
And Mr. Gladwin, I see that you have your hand up. I'm just gonna really quickly let the task force members hit their points, and then we'll circle back to you. But I see you.
I'm out. I'm done with my points, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Member Kirk.
For the record, we have the additional points from I'm gonna call him the resident Kirk, and we're taking them into account. So just to let you know.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think that the issues we just discussed kind of address my questions as well. So I really appreciate you guys listening to that and explaining the reasoning and hearing the feedback. Does Member Fruitstone or Member McLean, do you guys have anything to add or questions? Start with Member Fruitstone.
I wanted to ask, has there always been the health element of this in this document, or is that something that we are now adding in relationship to now that we're in COVID? I think I'm glitching. I feel I'm glitching. I see myself glitching.
We can hear you though.
Okay. I'm at school, so it's been a day. The lines are wet. That was my question. So, because I found it interesting that there's a health element in this. I don't have any corrections, so I'm kind of like, oh, okay.
I kind of missed the question. Was it directed to us, and if so, can you repeat?
Yeah, I was just curious to know, has there always been a health element included in this document, or is that something new that we are including now that we have COVID and we're dealing with pandemics?
It was considered before the pandemic, but it's not a state requirement. It is an additional element that has been included along with resilience and community design to enhance and protect the village and the residents. But it's not a requirement. It does not have to be there if there's something that stands out that may not be favorable, or otherwise it could be.
No, I really liked seeing it there, because I think this is it could be the beginning of something. And if so, if we're thinking, I appreciate that Juan thinks 40 years in advance. So I think it's something that it needs to be addressed now, so that in the future there is something that is established. And I appreciated, reading about the food banks and plans, like all that health element was really interesting. And I thought it was a great addition to it, though it's not required. I as a member of this task force and a resident, I enjoy seeing it. So it was really good.
Yeah, a little bit of background on that one. I'll be very brief, but this is a little bit of our signature element. We completed a couple of years ago with Live Healthy Little Havana and with the South Florida Health Foundation, a project where we paired planning with health. And the impact that planning and our environment have on our health, not just physical, but also mental health and resiliency, not just from climate, but also economic. And so it was an all-encompassing project, and we thought we should include that in El Portal as well, because I know that you guys value that. And again, things that people may not think, but planning has an impact on whether or not you walk to a place. And walking to a place has an impact on your heart condition, and your heart condition has an impact on your wallet and your, and on your family. And so there is what I was telling you earlier on. What is the comprehensive plan? It affects everything. We included it in here because we thought it was important, and because we thought that it applied very well to the kind of environment that you have in El Portal.
I'm done. Member McLean, do you have anything you want to?
Yeah, I do. Just a couple questions and some kind of ... type comments. So I just want to also clarify this because we've gotten a bunch of these documents and I haven't ever worked with a comprehensive plan before. So I just want to clarify that what I'm looking at, the way I'm thinking about what I'm looking at is correct. So there's a document that shows the amendments, which are the items that you guys are proposing or that the council is proposing adding into the existing comprehensive plan, right? Or altering the existing comprehensive plan. And then there's a data document for the amendments. And then there is, I guess that's it, right? So there's the amendments, and there's the data document for the amendments. And so part of the question that I have has to do, and I think this goes back on something that Courtney mentioned. So in looking at the amendments data, so the document that's 67 pages long, where it lays out, and I'm thinking specifically now about issues that we've been wrestling with around flooding, around our relationship to the river, on how our relationship to the river interfaces with the state and county definition of how we interface with the river. I want to just ask whether or not there's an opportunity right now to push a little harder on this, the question of whether or not we are coastal, number one. Number two, whether or not we are in fact in a hazard zone during natural disasters, because one of the data documents, and forgive me because it's so long, I'm just trying to find where I made the note, specifies that we're not currently considered in, I think it's in the coastal management section of this CDMP amendments data document. So that would be page 30, page 31, where it talks about the coastal zone, that we are not, it defines us as not being an estuary. It defines us as not being in a flood zone at another point in this. Also, just above that says that El Portal is not a coastal high hazard area. I would argue that that's not exactly true. So I don't know if there's any opportunity to, since this has to go to the state, whether or not we can push the boundaries a little bit in this document to try to get a little bit more protection for the village around these items. Serbia, do you guys have any thoughts about that? And I say this as somebody who has never put a comprehensive plan together or put it or worked through the mechanics of it with the state and county. So I just want to raise that. And then the other thing is that we clearly have outlined some policies or some objectives that we want to improve here, which is awesome, in the amendments overview. So under issue 7, where we talk about updating the infrastructure, and issue 5, where we talk about resilience, I think those are all really awesome. One of the questions I have here, though, again, is seeing if we have an opportunity here to strengthen the language, because after having my LMS discussion today and really thinking a lot about what is happening with the Little River Adaptation Plan right now, and what I heard from Orlando today in my conversation about LMS, we're very quickly going to have discussions again about seawalls and about raising streets and about starting a conversation with our residents about the reality of any house that's under 5 feet in terms of these types of infrastructure plans. So I don't know if we have an opportunity here within the general language of a comprehensive plan to push a little harder in those directions, but I want to raise the point because I do think we are really at a point where we have to try to advocate for these things as strongly as possible. That's the end of my comment.
Thank you. We can definitely do that. Actually, whether in the eyes of the state, we would have to show with the data how El Portal is being impacted by its location and its flood zones, and especially the Little River Canal. And perhaps if there's something, thank you for bringing it up, if there's something that is not included as part of the data and analysis then we probably do need to go in with more specific details and add it. And in terms of the planning for it, we can definitely include additional objectives, policies, or more specific language pertaining to these specific threats that you're mentioning.
Yeah, so an example, maybe, and we actually probably have data that we can actually bring along with this to back this up, but we are increasingly being affected. I mean, the definition of an estuary, right, is that you're tidal. And the only reason that we're not 100% tidal is that we have a water control structure between us and the bay. And increasingly, we are being affected by tidal stuff, and particularly during king tide. It's happening today. They had to shut the gate against the tide at a time when we got a very high level of water falling. And when that happens, you know, we would, you know, we become tidal in the sense that we're at the mercy of the impact of the tide and the canal working together. And there are times when, during storms, when Irma is an example, where the gate was open and we had to be tidal in that situation just because of the mechanics of the water and the way South Florida Water Management had to manage the river for flooding during these storm events. So either we're being affected because they shut the gates, or we're being affected because they pin the gates open. But there's a lot of interplay between our you know, our stretch of the river and the tide. So I think we need to make a case for that. And the former boundaries of you know, of the coastal zone are variously have been set by Biscayne Boulevard, where it runs under Biscayne Boulevard, and then a little bit later where the railroad tracks are, right? Those are the two areas that have been used, it's been designated as kind of the coastal zone on the east of that. But I think there's a very good case to be made for, especially with the rise in water and all the implications of everything we're talking about. We need to push that, we need to try to push that boundary back so that El Portal can really both have a conversation at the state and county level about that, but then also be eligible for funds and mitigation for these types of issues that are facing the village. So I would really like for us to I mean, if we have an opportunity right now to try to push for that, I think we need to. And also, you know, the fact that we don't think we're 100% in line with the county flood plan or evacuation plan either because of these issues. So anyway, I think those are all really, really important and super acute, like stuff we have to deal with in the next 5 years or sooner.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, it must absolutely be included in the comp plan and the data.
Again, as long as state allows us to do these modifications, because there are certain, as you can imagine, so you're absolutely right in us having that conversation with state to see if that can be done.
I mean, I appreciate that we can bring it to them and they might say no,
right.
But what I'm advocating for is let's bring it to them and let's make sure that we have the data to make as strong a case as possible. Because on the other side of that, if we can get them to say yes, or at least think about it, that's gonna help the village. And the other thing is that the Little River has been identified as a source of the recent fish kill and seagrass die-off that's happening. That's getting a lot of attention. So depending on the timing of when we bring this to the state, we already have the attention of the Biscayne Bay Task Force, DERM. I was speaking to the head of DERM 2 weeks ago, and all of the other like NGOs in the Bay that are concerned with water quality. They are all looking at the Little River. So it's politically a very good time for us to make this argument right now, because you know, they're all paying attention right now.
Good
so.
Point. We'll bring that up as we get into the comments from state as well.
Thank you, Member McLean, and thank you guys again for the responses to our questions. Do any of the members have anything else to add or to pose as a question before we turn over to Mr. Gladwin? Okay. Mr. Gladwin, I'm going to go ahead and open the floor up to you. You should be able to speak in video.
Okay. Can you hear me? I don't know. I guess
Yes.
I don't have any video, but that doesn't matter.
We can hear you. We can't see you.
Yeah, I don't see any video button, but No, it doesn't matter. Yeah, so I just very quick.
Lost them.
Here we go. Okay, let me find myself. Okay. Yeah, I just want to make a quick comment about Member Kirk's comments, because he really raised the absolute central question of, what's going on in a comp plan in a small municipality like ours. And I just want to say that, this issue of how we maintain our residential character and yet still kind of, have some part of the village, particularly on the other side of the train tracks where the trailer park and the annexed area is, that, might generate some revenue for the village. And this is something that we've wrestled with intensely over the years, and particularly in the two charrettes the village has had, the last one in particular. And, to me, what the comp plan does, my sort of view is that it takes a vision of what people in the village want the village to be, and then translates it into sort of constraints and guidelines, but it doesn't really give the underlying sort of philosophy of what we want. So, so I think, it's very good to review these past charrettes frequently and kind of get a re-feel for the issues. But I also think they're, like what Kristen said about the river-facing issues, we really need to have, maybe sponsored by Little River Conservancy, a river charrette. A charrette for all those issues, which actually was part of the first El Portal charrette in 1999. But, and the C7 planning and adaptation process has sort of tried to do a teeny bit of that, but it really needs to be a fundamental thing where people get together, and figure out, we can have seawalls or berms or, what's going to work, and bring people into it. So anyway, so that's my comment. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I follow up on that for a second?
Of course.
Okay, so so there is the county under the Resilience office, under Jim Murley and Katie Hageman, are about to start a new round, sort of the planning process. They have a grant on a Little River adaptation plan, right? And so there's going to be a series of community meetings. They're still trying to figure out exactly the cadence and how they're going to facilitate them. And this adaptation plan is focusing on 95 East, because it's a county-run plan. It's very important to them to get the unincorporated part of Miami-Dade activated for this, right? So they're really trying to activate Larchmont, among others, but we get to participate in this. So there's like an immediate opportunity right now to try to do something along this line that, can fall under, I think we're talking about two different things, right? We're talking about the comprehensive plan where we want to get the general structure in place. And then there's our own LMS process and our own, desire to do a charrette along the river and get our residents activated around some of these more acute issues. And then there's the larger county effort. So, but there's an architect involved in this. Like the county is going to lay out with an architect a plan for the Little River that we would like to see for sure. Things like seawall, like what is the seawall solution? Are there green blue projects that are going to be undertaken in this zone? All of that is stuff that we should have some input into, and it's happening like right now, between now and March.
Yeah, my comment on that, Kristen, would be they're going to probably do this on the cheap. I'm a total believer in the charrette type process where you really get together, look at possible drawings, listen to experts, think it through. You can't just do sort of tabletop exercises and bring in an architect. I think, we were tremendously lucky to 2 charrettes, and that was a totally different process, you know, of thinking, sitting down and working together than kind of getting together as committees and doing this and that, which is what I'm afraid is going to happen. And I'm saying this now not in terms of the comp plan. I'm saying it to you guys on the task force, because I think, you know, I think you really have to push for something like this. It takes a real effort for people to get together and think of what they want for the future. And, you know, just like what you said today about raising houses and all kinds of things, they're huge decisions to be made, expensive decisions. They're going to change the character of the village. And I think it really needs a planning process like a charrette that brings the village in.
Okay, well, maybe that's something that we can
Yeah,
table for right now.
Yeah,
but I
for
mean,
sure.
I think we should put it on our agenda for the future. I think at the moment for Plus Serbia, I think the big takeaway is just what do we need to do? Like, just even with what you've been hearing here right now and what we've raised, what do we need to plug into the comp plan now, since it's about to head to the state for review, that might give us some latitude to work on these types of issues, or that we at least memorialize these types of issues in our upcoming scope, I guess.
It likely starts with what you've mentioned, is outlining the data to back it up, data that shows what the risks are and what the current situation is, so that what we then plan for in the comp plan can be used to apply for grants and funding to then seek these projects such as the charrette or planning and adaptation guidelines. The comp plan can support these kind of initiatives backed up by data. And that's a big role of the comprehensive plan, is actually using it to apply for this kind of funding and to implement the projects that are envisioned for the future, to improve it and to grow in a sustainable and resilient way. Speaking specifically about the issues pertaining to this task force. So I think it should start with including that data and perhaps adding specific objectives and policies that are not included yet, that support these goals or these initiatives that want to be undergone in the future. Here.
And if Miami-Dade County is currently conducting a study, we are under the clock because we need to submit this. We have a certain timeline. But if Miami-Dade County is studying something right now that may provide future data that we can, we can always make an additional modification to the comp plan. Remember, this is an EAR, right? So this is a set time that each municipality has to update their comprehensive plan in a comprehensive way, meaning the whole thing. But if we have specific material or changes or amendments that we want to do afterwards, if the Miami-Dade County and is doing a study and we want to incorporate that data later in the comp plan, we can do that after as well. Again, this is not once we submit this, it's not, oh my goodness, we can't change it for 10 more years. We can.
So can you just very quickly, I know we're already an hour into our time and I don't want to, I want to be mindful of that, but can you guys quickly tell us what are the next marks that have to be hit? I know the council's going to be reviewing this to first reading. So just what are the deadlines that we're talking about if we do want to add anything here before, when is there a second reading?
There will be a second reading. So once we send it to state if approved during the council meeting, we have to transmit it to state within 10 days and to all the other reviewing agencies, including the county, South Florida Water Management District. There's a handful or around 10 or so agencies that will be reviewing, even neighboring cities, City of Miami, Miami Shores. And they all have, including state, the Department of Economic Opportunity, 60 days to return comments to us. It could be sooner, but no later than 60 days. At which point we can review their comments, make necessary updates, and we need to document, at that point, before the second reading, document every change specifically before we go back to council, before it goes back to council, and before transmitting again to state for a final approval. So there would be at least 60 days before we receive comments, and then we would have time to address those comments.
So we have at least 60 days to receive comments. In the meantime, we can make modifications, and we can, as long as we, document them. And then we have additional time if additional modifications need to come from our end, and then we will transmit again to state. So again, plenty of time. I want to make sure that we do this right. At the same time, if we miss something, or if something of an additional study comes up in the meantime, we can always amend it again, and it will be a simple, it might be a simple surgical amendment in February or March. So it's not the end of the world.
Well, great. Any other questions or comments from board members or Mr. Gladman? No? Well, thank you very much, Camila and Juan, for joining us and answering all those questions. I know that was incredibly helpful for me, and I'm sure for everybody else as well.
Before we get
Thank you very much, you guys. We appreciate it. I know that you guys are always busy, so we appreciate you guys coming out and spending time with us, Juan and Camila.
Not at all, but before we get dismissed, Cami, you wanna?
Oh yes, actually two things. Mr. Kirk, we've added the future land use, the data and maps on a separate tab that's more obvious along with the elements now. So for the record and everyone wanting to find it, it's out there along with the elements. And also, Ms. McLean, regarding resiliency or flooding mitigation strategies for individual properties, we were also looking at that in the guidelines. I know this doesn't have to do with a comprehensive plan, but I know you brought that up. And we know that the high water table is an issue too. It hasn't come up here, but on days like today especially, and sunny day flooding, it's an issue, and we're looking at that as well for the village.
Yeah, and I also, as my feedback to the form-based code documentation, talked about landscaping guidelines for raised septic, because that is something that is going to become more and more common. So,
yes.
And those that are watching on YouTube, please, if you have additional comments, send them our way. Again, still have time to make modifications. So since this is being broadcasted to the rest of the world, if you live in El Portal, send us comments. Thanks.
Wait, one quick question regarding the map. Where am I finding that? I'm on the site here. Is it just under the maps and data?
Camila, would you like to share your screen?
Yes.
Since this is being broadcasted on YouTube? Madam Chair, if you don't mind, we'll share screen and show it exactly to everybody where this thing is at.
Please do.
Sure, let me see. Thank you. Okay, I think it's always hard on Zoom to choose the right window. Okay, am I sharing the right?
Do me a favor, Camila, go to the initial El Portal website, not the planning and zoning, so that they know how to get to planning and zoning.
Oh, yes, okay.
If you go to the Village of El Portal website at elportalvillage.com, you'll have departments. Under departments, you have planning and zoning. And in planning and zoning, you'll have the tabs: zoning, comprehensive plan, pattern book, active projects, and contact us. Under comprehensive plan, if you click there, it'll open. Make sure that you allow your browser to open a new window, because then you'll find everything related to planning and zoning there. In the comprehensive plan, you'll see that there is a brief description with the existing comprehensive plan right there where Camila is pointing. The EAR-based amendments from 2011, that was what was done almost 10 years ago. And then an overview of what we're doing, an online survey that I believe that's closed already, Camila, if I'm not mistaken. And there's data, maps, documents, concepts. If you don't have much time to read the whole document, at least take a look at the concepts. Make sure that you're aware of them, and elements and amendments. If you'd like to open that one very briefly because it's very clear, you can download a PDF with each of the land use.
Well, they're all separate. All the elements are separate here.
The elements are separate, right? So, and you can provide comments either by emailing us at the contact us button up top, or you can leave your name and page number and comment right there on that page. So you have a few different ways of contacting us and sending us comments. We welcome them all.
And the maps are in, thank you, Juan. The maps are at the end of the data. They're all there.
And one of them is specifically titled Future Land Use Map.
Yes, on page 51.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yes, no, thank you for raising that.
But for the record, and I'm not saying it for you, Kirk, I'm saying it for everybody else's benefit, it has not changed. It's one of those things in the comprehensive plan that is not changing.
And,
is there anything else that we can assist you with or answer any additional questions?
I think that covers it.
Thanks.
Oh, Member McLean, okay. Thank you both so much again for your time. We really appreciate it, and all the work that you've done on this.
Our pleasure.
Thank you very much, you guys. As always, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, Chair, and everyone, and members for having us.
Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Okay, moving on from the comp plan, as Member McLean pointed out, we are a little bit behind time, so to hit these as fast as we can. The current SNR task force board vacancy. I will turn that over to, oh, Vice Mayor, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Madam Chair.
I was going to turn that back over to Member Fruitstone because she brought up the potential appointee to our meeting last week.
Madam Chair, if I may, before Vice Chair Fruitstone comes in, I was just going to say, you guys, especially for the sake of, time and things like that, I was just going to say, so going into this, so think about this one of two ways. You guys have the choice of, first of all, if somebody else has like another individual in mind, they would want to be that fifth voting member. They can say that now, and then we can, at the next meeting or something like that, meet that person, and we can push it along like that. If nobody else has anybody in mind, and you guys want to vote on Ms. Valencia as the fifth member today, then I would say that, Kyle, can we bring Ms. Valencia over, please? I would say that you guys, if you have any questions for her and things like that, to see if you guys feel like she would be a good fit as a fifth member, do that now. And then, Madam Chair, you can ask for a motion to make Ms. Valencia the fifth member. You have to get a motion, I have to get a second, and then I can do the roll call. Those are your two choices, you guys, I would say.
Let me just, thank you, Vice Mayor. Let me just start out. Welcome, Ms. Valencia. Let me just start out by asking if anybody has a proposal to bring to the table for the fifth voting member. Okay, hearing none, I would propose that, well, let me open it up. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Valencia before I would propose a vote?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
My concern has nothing to do with Sandra. She has been involved, she has been active in other areas of the community, so I have no doubt that she will be an active and involved member here. I only want to bring attention to the defined makeup of the task force per the ordinance, and it says the membership as a whole shall reflect a broad range of opinion, expertise, socioeconomic levels, races, ages, and expertise with the objective of implementing the plan. And my concern is that we have 4 of the 5 of us, probably within 10 years, if we had Ms. Valencia, we'd have 4 of the 5 of us within 10 years of each other. We would not have, I believe, a particularly diverse group. Now, that has absolutely nothing to do with Ms. Valencia's qualifications on her own or her ability to execute it. I'm simply raising that this is something that's in our directives, and we can abide by it or not. And I don't know how we discuss it and talk about it, and whether it's important to us. That's all.
Member Kirk,
I
within,
think she'll do a good job.
thank you. Within 10 years of age, is that what you're referring to in terms of?
Yeah, I'd say everybody but you is within 10 years of age of each other.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, I would just say that I understand what Member Kirk is saying about diversity and things like that. We always want to strive to reach that. I would say though that for this committee or for this task force that you guys do such great work, and I would think that my suggestion would be that you guys just include the best minds possible in your task force. Now, if we had I'm going to say this. If we had let's say if we had, 4 different members who were right now, 4 different individuals who are right now wanting that 5th position, or 3, or even 2, then, and there was 2 different varieties as far as diversity goes, then maybe those type of things you would want to include that. I just don't see anyone else in the future, let's say, different, that would be coming to step forward to join the task force. You guys also keep in mind that when we get to the year point, the council decides if we roll over. You guys can decide, hey, this year was great for me, I'm going to bow out, replace me with somebody else and things like that. But I think that right now in the immediate, that there would be no reason to stop. We don't have any other choice. You guys don't have any other choices. So we just can't fulfill as far as looking for somebody who might be, a different race or this or that or whatever. If the person's not there, we can't create an individual who doesn't exist at this moment. So.
Thank you. I would just like to comment on what I really appreciate you that up, just because I think that that's something to be constantly be cognizant of and make sure that we're trying to consider meeting our mission written in the resolution in our charter. And also just generally to achieve the benefits of diversity. But to second Vice Mayor Nickerson's point, Ms. Valencia seems very highly qualified, that she would be a wonderful contribution to the task force. And I think that that should be something that we continue to consider moving forward, should we maintain our positions on the course. But for this particular appointment, and that we have such a wonderful qualified person volunteering, and that we don't have any other volunteers brought to the table, that's something that we consider to keep in mind in the future, but that, in my opinion, should not keep us from moving forward with the vote today.
Also, Madam Chair, if I may, Madam Chair, keep in mind that currently the way that the task force is doing this right now, it have to be a unanimous vote for a 5th voting member to be added. So, Member Kirk, if he feels the way that he does, he does hold that power to where, if he feels like it is not being done the right way, that's his right as a voting member of this task force, that he could vote in the nay, if it gets to that point, if you guys get that motion in a second, Madam Chair. So.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
I appreciate that, Mr. Vice Mayor, but that my point was nothing, and I tried to say it multiple times. It's nothing against Sandra. I believe she will do a good job. I just was looking at what the structure and designation of the task force was, and if we have to do that, then multiple of us probably should turn over, and I mean that very truly, to meet that objective, because we are socioeconomically probably relatively close. So, and age-wise, I know 4 of the 5 of us will be close. So my concern is only that we're not meeting that goal, not in any way that Sandra would not be a valued member and a very contributing member to the task force. And again, Ms. Valencia, if I have said anything that was interpreted negatively, please, that is not the intention in any way, shape, or form.
I'm not taking it at all, so don't worry about it. It's okay. You're good. You're good.
We understood, Member Kirk, and we appreciate it. Actually, we really appreciate that. You know, we appreciate you, you know, looking through and holding us accountable to the documents that you know, that we have to abide by. It's very important.
Yeah, I really appreciate that too, Member Kirk. It's interesting that you bring that up because I'm not really sure what our various races, socioeconomic status, ages are. So I don't know that everyone is in 10 years of each other, myself excluded, except to take your word for it. But it is an interesting that you bring up because a lot of that focus on diversity is kind of difficult to ascertain without directly asking somebody.
Can I make a suggestion?
Or doing a simple Google search. Sorry, Madam Ms. McLean.
That's okay. So I think that so I say this as somebody who has had to go through Black Lives Matter recently and field all kinds of questions from the press about why we don't make distinctions in our business about who is and isn't a diverse author or artist or whatever. I would suggest that maybe I'm in favor of bringing Sandra on right now for the same reasons that Omar, just for practicality reasons, and because I believe that Sandra would be a great addition. And but I think that what's interesting about what Courtney's raised, and I would encourage us to think about it a little differently, is that rather than think about it about sort of making a distinction about race or anything else, I would encourage us to think about adding people who have historically been in the village for longer, because I think that one of the things that if we want to preserve, like I think Hugh's a great example as an advisor, someone who's been here for a really long time and has a deep knowledge of the history of the village and what we've already done. And for me personally, one of the things that, when I think about diversity, one of the things that I would like to ensure is that the people who have historically been living in this neighborhood for years and years and years don't get sort of run over by people who've been here for a shorter amount of time and who are coming at it with a different perspective, or just who don't really have, you know, knowledge of what we've tried before, what the village used to be like, or why we made that decision, like why is the nature trail there, how did that come to pass, like all that stuff. So I would just encourage us as we move forward to think about that kind of diversity also, and if that, you know, just historic diversity in the neighborhood, so that we are representing, you know, a lot of knowledge about the history of the neighborhood. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, and I think that's and as a relatively new resident, I have very much appreciated the historic knowledge that you all have and bring to the table, and I think it's important to have that same diversity, people that are just moved in, maybe someone in the middle, someone here a long time. I think that's great. And I just want to also acknowledge that we all have a real diversity of backgrounds in terms of our professional lives as well. And I think that is a really valuable asset. I don't think any of us do anything close to the same thing.
Madam Chair, before we move on, which I think we should so we can get things running, but Madam Chair, let me just say for the record, because this is a record, let me just say for the record that we did have a fifth member who was different, who did bring diversity, and that member stepped down, which is why Ms. Valencia is here now. So we did start off with another member who was much different than the rest of the task force, and that member did unfortunately step down, decided to step down. Okay? So just wanted to put that out there for the record. Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair is like, who is that? If you remember Ms. Purcell.
No, I know who you're talking about. I didn't know in what sense. We just talked about so many types of diversity. I didn't know in what sense she was diverse, you know, because we were talking about resident length and things like that.
It's all good. We should probably move on.
Oh, should we probably vote?
I think that we should. I'd like to. Does anyone else have anything to add before we call vote?
Madam Chair, I think before you guys, before you ask for a motion and a second and a vote, Madam Chair, I think that what you should do is first ask if any of the members have any questions for Miss Valencia. If they need anything that, that might make them make their decision either, verified yay or nay. And if nobody has any questions, Madam Chair, then you ask for a motion, ask for a second, and then Madam Chair, I'll do a roll call if that is the task force's wish.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Valencia? No questions? Okay, great. Well, I'm happy to ask for a motion to approve Valencia as the 5th member of our task force.
I motion to approve Patricia Valencia, sorry, Sandra Valencia as our 5th member. Thank you.
I second the motion.
Motion by Member McLean, a second by Member Fruitstone. Hearing a motion and a second, I'll turn it over to Vice Mayor Nickerson for roll call.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. We're voting right now for Ms. Sandra Valencia, who is a resident of El Portal, to be the 5th voting member of the Sustainability and Resiliency Task Force. Member McLean, yay or nay?
Yay.
Member Kirk, yay or nay?
Yes.
Vice Chair Fruitstone, yay or nay?
Yes.
Chairperson Carpenter, yay or nay?
Yes.
Chairperson Carpenter, you have a unanimous vote, which is what is required for a voting member of the task force.
Thank you so much, Vice Mayor. And I'd like to, yes, thank you so much, Sandra, for volunteering your time and your energy into this. And we'd like to officially welcome you as the 5th member of the task force.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Madam Chair, and I'm extremely excited. I wanted to share with you guys over the last couple of weeks I've been participating in the FIU Institute of Environment and Sea Level Solution Center sessions online, so that I'm trying to educate myself also and try to just bring something good also to the task force. So really excited.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandra. Looking forward to having you join and all and valuable insight.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Extremely excited. Thanks.
Wonderful. So Vice Mayor, procedurally now, can we have Sandra go ahead and participate in the rest of the meeting, or does she officially start at the next meeting?
You can participate starting right now, you guys.
Okay, great. Welcome, Sandra. Okay, so we will move on to H3. I believe is my agenda item, the Army Corps of Engineers. So as I think you guys know, a lot of Everglades restoration issues through my role as a staff attorney for the Everglades Law Center. And one of the things that we work on, I'm going to give like a 10,000 foot review, the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan, SERP, which is $1 billion, now 20-year in restoration project funded by federal government and the state government. It involves many, multiple smaller projects to restore the water flow, hydrology, and quantity, timing, distribution of water in South Florida, basically from Orlando to Key West. So within that project, Army Corps of Engineers has just noticed what is referred to as BBCER, which is Big Bay Southeastern Everglades Restoration Project, I believe. They love their acronyms. And it is the combination of multiple SERP projects that affect the water quality, timing, and distribution of water in South Florida, particularly in the Miami area. So the study area for this project begins in Portal and runs down to Florida City. And Army Corps is just kicking this off, and I reached out to Vice Mayor Nickerson and the mayor and village manager about possibly having the village council appoint a member of the project delivery team to participate in this BBCER project on behalf of El Portal. And the project delivery team consists of members from the various municipalities, agencies, and state sponsors. So they'll have a member from each of the cities, the South Florida Water Management, the DEP, and they are the people who are leading the conversations and questions of the scientists and decision makers. And so I had suggested that the village a representative to the project team to follow the BBC project and represent the interests of El Portal in that. And so I mentioned it to them. I wanted and Vice Mayor discussed bringing it up to you all to see what your thoughts were on having a member appointed and my volunteering to be that member.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I just want to tell the task force. So this is not a voting item, you guys. This was an item. The chairperson reached out to myself and Mayor Cabillos, and I believe she CC'd, or I believe the village manager was on that also, chairperson, and to represent the village. I have no problem with it. From what I gather, the mayor has no problem with it. But I did tell the chairperson that neither the task force nor the council on Tuesday will have to vote on it. She did, because the chairperson did reach out and say, hey, you guys, do I have to get voted on? Like, do I have to be approved to represent the village? I don't think that needs to be done, but I said, what you should do is just at least, notify the task force, and then notify, which I believe the mayor's going to put her on the agenda, just notify the council, just kind of like the same thing she's doing right now, just in case if anybody has anything they want to say about it, any type of reservations about it or anything, just for, transparency purposes and just respect purposes. Okay. So that's what she's doing. I'm 100% behind her, though, as the liaison here. That's my speech, Madam Chair. That's my speech.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm very happy to bring this to the task force to see if anybody has any reservations or input on that. And if in the spirit of full transparency, the village of El Portal will have to send an email basically asking PDT spot, a project delivery team spot, and then appointing me as the representative, or basically today in that Monday's meeting. But I would be speaking in public meetings, official representative of the village of El Portal. So yeah, I'd love to hear comments, feedback, reservations, etc. Yes, Member Kirk.
I have a question. So what would be the responsibility that you would have, aside from to provide input to them and or bring information back? Would there be any delivery responsibilities you've had or something like that, or is it unknown at this point?
I don't believe so. It's the project delivery team meetings are all public, so everybody can listen and hear it. The only members of the public that are allowed to ask questions and get responses, decision makers, are the members of the project delivery team. So they have to listen to the input from the PDT, and they have to respond to questions from the PDT, as opposed to the general public where they don't have to respond at all. And so that would be kind of my role. I don't believe that there's any specific deliverable or submission that I would be doing, but my comments and feedback would be incorporated into the decision process. Did that answer your question?
You did, thank you.
So I want to put in a strong vote in favor of this, because I think that having someone from our little village sitting in these meetings is really important. And I just generally would like to keep I would like to have a direct line to hear what's going on with the Army Corps, because let me just ask Elizabeth, is the Back Bay study part of this, or is this different?
It's different than the Back Bay study.
Okay.
Obviously both are with the Army Corps, but there's a separate delivery team. I presume the Back Bay study just limited to the Biscayne Bay, Southeastern Everglades ecosystem restoration project.
Okay, so I doesn't matter. I mean, I do think that having a direct link to whatever is happening with the Army Corps to keep a track of it is really important. And for those of you guys, we haven't specifically talked about the Back Bay study here, but the Back Bay study is something that we want to keep an eye on, because that will affect, and it's a long-term, we're not talking about immediately, but that is one of the places where we might have high seawalls thrust upon us if we're not careful. So we just want to have an eye on the Army Corps generally. So I'm all for this. I think it's great. And especially having somebody with your expertise in the Everglades representing us there would be fantastic.
Thank you so much.
I concur.
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. Thank you all very much. I really support, and I'm gonna the village council on Monday as well, and we'll be very happy to relay any comments that you all have about the project to the Army, and then obviously report back in the same vein. So thank you all for your support. I really appreciate that. Okay, so that's me on H3. Moving on to H4, and I will turn that over to Member McLean because I believe she proposed the fertilizer ordinance.
Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to propose that I'm just going to introduce the idea here, and then I'm going to propose that we table it for further, like a deeper discussion next time. But one of the things that, and I know, Elizabeth, that you actually also sent over information about a fertilizer ordinance, but basically just to introduce.
I can explain that too. Why I said that, go ahead.
So just to introduce the concept here. So we talked about the fact that the Little River is a contributor, is being talked about as a major contributor to possible health of the bay, or negatively impacting the health of the bay. One of the things that Waterkeepers is trying to have happen, and also this is supported by the Biscayne Bay Task Force report also, is to get as many municipalities as possible to pass a fertilizer ordinance that will reduce the amount of nutrients that are going into the river from landscaping activities. And so it's along the lines of any other, it's along the lines of the things that we would do, I think, naturally as a village around around all of our programs around the environment. So I included, and Omar forwarded, a generic draft ordinance that was generated by Waterkeepers that I think we should review and talk about on our next meeting. And I think that, I'd like to see us adopt some form of this, and I think it's an important first step in just raising the public consciousness within the village about the fact that pretty much anything you put down on the ground here is going to wind up in the river. So that's the first conversation that then leads to a conversation about septic and everything else. Like, it's just part and parcel of the whole thing. So I'd like to table it for a deeper discussion and really look at that ordinance and come back to the table next meeting to talk about it.
Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, I am strongly in favor of the proposal that Member McLean has made, and I sent, Vice Mayor on my behalf sent a letter from the Everglades Coalition. And the reason that I shared that was to provide that as a letter of support in favor of the ordinance Member McLean proposed. Everglades Coalition of, don't quote me on this number, 62 environmental organizations in Florida, and it takes a lot for them to all get together and agree to pass a resolution in support of something. This was one of the few that has been passed by the Everglades Coalition this year. Everglades Law Center, the company that I work with, part of the coalition, and this ordinance was approved, and it very strongly, it's passing of these all over the state. But the recommendation that are very strongly mirror the proposal that McLean proposed. So just in terms of presenting another perspective from a larger environmental organization, I just wanted to share that with everybody.
Yeah, and I think it falls in line with what Miami Shores Village, I think they recently passed something in relationship to fertilizers or something. I saw through Bound by Beauty with Mary Benton, and I'm on another organization that is Bound by Beauty, but we're forming this other sub organization, and we keep talking about yes, educating people about fertilizers and using natural instead of these synthetics that are affecting our waterways and also affecting wildlife, especially pollinators. So, but I'm almost positive they may have, because they were talking about like that was something like a triumph. Finally, they're doing something. So I would support this for sure.
Thank you, Member Fruitstone. Member Valencia or Kirk, you have anything to add?
We'll talk about it. I think in the interest of time, we, as Member McLean said, we should talk about it next time. But I do have a concern with how it would be implemented, how it would be enforced, if at all, seeing as we don't really do code enforcement very well. So how would we actually, aside from suggesting to people, this is a great idea, use more natural stuff so it doesn't end up, as phosphorus and other nitrogen and other stuff in the water. How do we enforce it? How does it impact people, etc.? So that's my focus for next time.
Okay, I will go ahead and move that we move next week's agenda.
You get a second.
Thank you. All those in favor of moving this to next week, say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor, say nay. Great. This is next week's. Okay, great. Moving on to briefing notes and reference sites. Mr. Gladwin, this is your, yes, Vice Mayor, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, Madam Chair, yes, this is Mr. Gladwin's.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mr. Gladwin, I the floor to you.
Okay. I just wanted to update you on, a few meetings ago, I said I was starting a briefing note site to give you access to background materials. And I sort of had a recent burst of work on it, although I think it's about halfway done. But I think there's some parts of it now that you might find useful. And I just want to make a quick comment about how it's sort of developing. The site itself is at the c7riochico.net site I have /BN for briefing notes. But what I've tried to do is there are different topics. Each section has kind of an overview that I write, and then a place where I'm starting to pull together reference materials that you will need. But as I do it, I'm also, somebody commented earlier about the advantage of having old timers like me who kind of know the history. And I'm realizing that's really important for a lot of these issues, because the fact of the matter is that what you're doing now, the village on resiliency, working on climate change and the environment, is something that's been going on in South Florida for a very, very long time. And actually, El Portal and people here have been part of it. And I think, there's kind of, it's always been the case that in South Florida, people have known climate change is coming. They've known that we're in a completely imperiled environment, and they know that the human system and the natural system are kind of inextricably linked together. And that realization has been going on, certainly in the 35 years I've lived in South Florida. And, I think it has to guide what we're doing now. And I also have to honestly feel that we have to build on what's been done here, and we have to fight really hard against all the people that are constantly trashing South Florida. I mean, there's just a constant stream of articles that come out about how stupid we are here in South Florida, that we're ignoring climate change, we're going to go underwater. It's kind of like, during Black Lives Matter, when we had really good protests, an incredible job done by all the police forces here. Miami-Dade County had virtually zero property damage, very little repression of people's right to speak. Was that a big article in the papers all over the country? Nope, not a mention. And I think it's the same thing here. So, I've already put up a bunch of documents and things that I think at your leisure, and I'll be adding more. And, you know, every time I add something, it will be noted at the top what's been added. But I'd like you to look at it, give me feedback. If there are other things you want referenced there, let me know. So that's about it. Any questions about it or anything?
No, just a comment that we need to add now our newest member. So we need to add member Valencia to the correspondence that you provide to all of us, which is really amazing. It's really, really thorough.
Okay.
And I appreciate that so much.
Yes, and by the way, the gate is open and water is dribbling out of the river right now.
Vice Mayor, who needs to talk to the village manager to have her added to the list? You got it? Okay, thank you.
Then you're on the same page, Member Kirk. I was just going to say she'll be added to the sustainability email list. I talked to the Vice Mayor. Member Kirk, we're right here, my brother. We're right here. Thank you very much, Member Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Gladwin. I'm so sorry my internet kicked me off for a few minutes. I missed the beginning of what you said, but I can go back and watch on the recording that the Vice Mayor always does.
Yeah. It was awesome. He was continuing to push to lead the way when it comes to making great information available. And
yeah, but just
advocating.
Check out the site. Stu, check out the site. And
let me know
what you think.
I'm not surprised at all.
I am very opinionated, and you know, as you'll see in my historical thoughts, and I'm sure there are going to be some coming down the road about the Everglades you might disagree with, and I hope you will include.
Oh, I look forward to reading them, and thank you as always, Mr. Gladwin. I'm sorry that I missed that, but I will go back and watch what you said this afternoon.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. Just moving right along here, we'll move to item H6, contributors on the Sunshine Law. Vice Mayor, does this mean you have an update for us on the Sunshine Law as it applies to potential contributors?
I wish I did. So for update really quickly, Madam Chair, and I'll go through this very, very quickly, for two reasons. So it's not only the contributors with the Sunshine Law, but it's also with the flood plan that we sent off to state. Because remember, we had to send it off to state so it didn't contradict with what's already in place. Due to our transition that we're going through right now as a village with our attorney, I don't have the information yet. I've reached out to the attorney, the current attorney. He hasn't gotten back to me with that information as of yet. I have confidence that within the next week or so that we'll get that information. As far as the flood plan, which kind of like I wanted to bring up also, as far as the flood plan, the same thing. So I was speaking with one of the state senators earlier, and he was saying that, well, the other day, and then we were talking about earlier also, and he was saying that with the election and how everything is going right now with the election, and there might be more state representatives coming in and different things as far as the local election goes, the state elections go, that right now the flood plan is there, but nobody is, the state is not looking to approve anything right now. They're going to start looking at those things after November 3rd, he said. All right. So after the election is over, they'll get back to those type of approvals, is what he told me. So with the flood plan, that's going to come back to, because remember I sent you guys an email saying that I would bring it to try to do October, if not November. You guys remember I sent that email out about the flood plan. So I'm definitely looking for November in that case, because he said that those things, they're not looking to approve any of those type of things for municipalities until after the elections are over. All right, and that's my update for those two things. But as far as the Sunshine Law situation, I have confidence that the Village of El Portal will settle its attorney situation soon, within the next week, and then business will be able to move on as normal.
Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Okay. Moving on, so I'm going to go ahead and skip well, let's just establish it. Our next task force meeting is next Wednesday, November 4th at 3:30 p.m. Ms. Valencia, Member Valencia, is that the current schedule we have alternating every 2 weeks? Does that work with your schedule?
So
not next Wednesday, Madam Chair, but
Oh, I'm sorry, not next Wednesday, Wednesday, November 4th.
Yep, thank you.
Ms. Valencia, does that work? Member Valencia, does that work with your schedule if we maintain every 2 weeks? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, that works perfect. Sorry, I had my glitchy internet right now, so I was missing it. So yes.
No, I totally understand. I just got completely kicked off. So, okay, great. So our last item, I'll turn it back over to Member McLean for the LMS update.
Okay, so I just want to let everybody know that in the department of like liaising and following through on the assignments that we had assigned a couple of meetings ago, I had a meeting with Christia Alou, the village manager, and Orlando Rubio, who is one of the engineers that works with the village and who is particularly involved historically with the stormwater management plan and has had some work also on the septic to sewer plan, just to initiate an LMS, a process for revisiting and revising our LMS projects with the state. So it's been a while since we've updated our LMS, and just as for anyone who's listening, who, as a matter of background, like one of the ways that we get things funded in this village when it comes to resiliency issues is to have projects already in an LMS document, which is under review for the state, so that when money becomes available, these LMS projects from all over the state get funded based on their priority. And part of how things get priority is how actively engaged the municipality is in the process, how realistic the projects are, and how they feed into whatever's going on currently. And that is a way oversimplification. I'm sure Hugh has many things to say about that, but we're going to table that part of the discussion for a future meeting when we want to really tackle this. But I want to let everybody know that we had this meeting. And one of the things that became really apparent in the course of this 30-minute meeting, which touches on things we've already talked about, is the fact that yes, we have LMS projects in the state document, one of which is a pretty major pumping station in the west part of the village on 87th Street that's part of the master plan. However, one of the things that Orlando raised today that I think we have got to get a handle on is that given the groundwater issues that we're having in the west part of the village, and the fact that the stormwater management plan does not contemplate things like raising streets or raising houses or adding seawalls, that we really need to think about how our current LMS projects are going to intersect with some of these other things we've been discussing that probably really are going to become acute for the village in the next 2 to 5 years, right? So addressing the properties under 5 feet, addressing the fact that we could put in a pumping station, but if we don't have seawalls and our current seawall level is overtopped, which is almost happened today, that those pumps are not going to be very useful for us because they're just going to be basically pumping water back on the village because the river will already be above the level of the pumps. So I have not talked about this with Hugh or anybody else who's been involved in the LMS process for a while. So I'm just putting a pin in the fact that in addressing our LMS responsibilities with the state, we need to fold in a deeper discussion about some of these other issues. And one of the things that came up today that I want to get on immediately is that, and Omar, I don't know if you were here when the seawall project was discussed historically, that was done by T.Y. Lin. I know Jason was the village manager at the time. No one in the village seems to be able to put their hands on those original plans. So one of the things that I think we want to do is to try to get a hold of those original seawall plans. So Orlando said that he's already reached out to T.Y. Lin to see if they've got archival copies. I don't know, Hugh, if you happen to have archival copies. I'm going to ask Adam Old, who now works with Jason at Omni, if Jason knows where there are copies of these plans. But I just
taking out an old manager. That's from like 2003.
Yeah, right. So it's historic. However, we need to look at those. And one of the things that Orlando said specifically is that in any revision of LMS, we need to decide to what height we're going to be planning for, right? Like so there's a lot in there to unpack. So that's my very, very brief update. And I would, I don't necessarily think for next meeting we need to have it on the agenda, but thinking out a little bit after I have a little more time to kind of pull some things together, that we may want to devote 1 or 2 meetings primarily towards discussing LMS and how it intersects with some of these other issues. So we got 1 more minute left. I don't know.
For the record, can you please, in case anybody is watching this on the replay, can you please define the acronym LMS?
Hugh, can you define the acronym LMS?
Local mitigation strategy. And now you can go to the information site that I just mentioned, and you'll find a whole deal on the history, all the documentation. I mean, that's the one purpose of that site. When something like the LMS comes up, you go to the site, and there you have the whole history of it, and how it affects the village and everything. And by the way, Kristen, on the seawall, when poor Jason arrived as village manager, that was his first big project. And he immediately got in a war with a citizens revolt led by one Hugh Gladwin against the plan.
Excellent.
So needless to say, he never gave me a copy of the document.
Okay, all right, fine. So there's one piece of information that you and I have never discussed, but I'm sure we're going to discuss now. So, but anyway, I'm sorry, Courtney, go ahead.
Member McLean, does it make sense for you to kind of, since you're the LMS liaison type person with the village manager, for you to kind of gather the information, and when you're ready, we should put it on the agenda? Is that?
Yes, I think that's what I would propose. I'm just wanting to let you guys know that we're starting the discussion and that we are executing on our, on what we talked about in terms of the liaison role. And it is going to be a more substantial conversation than just me helping her fill out the Excel document. That's what I'm saying. So yes, I would propose, Courtney, or Mr. Kirk, that is, that's a great plan. So let me corral some sensible material, like just try to pull the history together, but then also do a little bit more fact finding so that I can come back with an update and also maybe a proposal for what we might need to do in order to, move this forward. So,
Kristen, I know that maybe Audrey Edmondson, who was mayor, may be hard to get a hold of, but there was another council person, not St. Aubin. Who is the one that she lives right at the end of?
Saintville?
Yes.
Yeah.
She lives at the very end of the street of 87th Street Northwest. And she was mayor for a while. And
in my opinion, the best mayor we ever had.
She was a teacher. But
there's that historic knowledge coming in here. Yes.
She 2001. Not as long as Hugh, but long enough. So maybe reaching out to them, that they may have an idea. I know that there was like not a lot of really good filing happening, so it could actually be in the office. I don't know.
You could go to the company. The problem was that this was a Tallahassee end run funding project, and it came through, and basically there wasn't enough money. It was either a question of doing a seawall right for a small length or doing a crazy project that ran the length of the village on the super cheap.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like anything that anyone would seriously consider now. But I'm sure the engineering company has copies of the plan.
I just think it's really upset about it too, because they felt that they should have a right to have whatever wall they want and not what the village is saying for your own safety and your property's safety.
Well, I think the political and environmental climate is different right now. And I think I think I want to get, if we can get our hands on it, I just think it would be good to have historically, since we're going to have the conversation. We're going to need the conversation again, and it would be good to have it. But yeah, I don't want to unpack it now, but I did just want to pin it to our board for the future. And I will, like I said, I'm going to do some fact gathering and just try to figure out how to lay out a process and a discussion for us. That will make sense. It relates to all this.
Our last agenda item in unfinished business, unless anyone else has anything to add, I just wanted to hit on the lighting issue that Member Kirk brought up last time. I reached out to my contact at Tropical Autobahn, and she directed me to for McLean brought up to us. It's pretty extensive. And Vice Mayor provided to everybody a document on the impacts of street lighting on wildlife. And in my discussions with Deanna Pierre from the Sierra Club, she pointed out to me that it's difficult to pick there is no wildlife friendly lighting because lighting impacts all wildlife differently. And there's no one answer that this will be safe for all animals because all the different species are impacted differently. And so she has asked for more information on what types of lights we're using because there's a couple variables that you can manipulate to minimize the impacts on wildlife. And that is the spectrum, intensity, direction of the lighting, and the duration. So she's asked for a lot more information about that. And I reached out to Councilperson Varela to see if he would be willing to connect with her directly and with me as well about these issues. So I'm working on that. Vice Mayor, do you know what the time frame on that lighting project is?
Yeah, you guys have time because I believe I sent you guys an email maybe a couple of weeks ago or a week ago, where Perella sent out the beginning of his flyer where he's gonna have a town hall, and that town hall is not set for I think like another month if I'm not mistaken,
okay.
Or something like that. So
great,
yeah.
Thank you for that. I remember you having sent that. Well, great. So I'll continue. I'm waiting to hear back from Councilperson Varela, but I'm hoping that I can just connect them directly so that Ms. Dompierre at the Sierra Club can provide us some information on ways that we could still have lighting, but make it the most eco-friendly, environmentally friendly type that we can. So I'll keep you all up.
Great article, great background article / paper. Really appreciate that. We did talk about some issues with height and temperature of bulbs, whether it's a yellow bulb or a blue bulb.
The color.
Mm-hmm.
All sorts of stuff that was well thought out and comprehensive. So definitely appreciate that. Just want to balance that with things like cost and safety. It's not all for the environment and it's not all for safety and it's not all for cost. We have to find that happy balance where I think we do the least damage to the environment while doing what we need to do from a safety perspective and do it in a fiscally responsible manner. And where that is, I defer to the experts.
Thank you, Member Kirk. I agree, and I'm hoping that Ms. Dompierre will be able to help us inform that conversation. So I'll let you guys know next meeting how that goes, and then we can start informing that conversation before the town hall. And that's all the unfinished business I have. Does anybody else have any unfinished business?
Yes, I have two emails, one to the Village of Biscayne Park, as well as to the City of North Miami. And I have not received responses if they have resiliency and and sustainability task force committees. So I'm waiting. So that I've emailed.
Okay, great. Anybody else? All right. I will, Member, let me just check in with you as the keeper of the keys. Anything else that we're forgetting?
No, our let's see, we have our action items in decent shape. Omar has the stuff from the attorneys, that the attorney that's still hanging out there. Omar also is going to do the adding Sandra to the email distribution list with the manager, and we completed our new voting member. So we're good on the action items.
Perfect. Okay, I'll open up to Good and Welfare. Mr. Gladman is already with us, and I don't see anything on the attendees. Mr. Gladman, anything you'd like to add? Or Chief Magnuson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, great. Not hearing anything else. Can I get a motion to adjourn today's meeting? Only 9 minutes late.
I think that sounds great. I move we adjourn.
Thank you, Member Quirk. I will second that if I'm allowed. Hearing a motion in a second, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
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 All those in favor
Aye.
say nay. Hearing none, the El Portal Resiliency and Sustainability Task Force meeting is adjourned at 5:40 p.m. Thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you guys. You guys take
Yeah,
care.
see you later.
You guys are wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you, guys.
Congratulations, Miss Valencia.
Thank you.
Chair Carpenter, you are great. Congratulations, Miss Valencia. You guys take
Thanks, Chief, for being here, sticking through it.
Always,
Thank you.
You guys
Talk to
take
you
care.
later.
Okay, bye-bye.